I can without a doubt say that Resident Evil Village is a very underrated Resident Evil game. It is now officially the 1 year anniversary since this game's release, and it damn sure does not feel like it at all. So for this video, sit back and relax as I do my first ever Resident Evil retrospective / review on a Resident Evil game. I will not be examining the process of making Village or anything like that. I will just be going through the story and the content this game has. Before we get into the video, be sure to leave a like and comment to help this video reach the YouTube algorithm, but more importantly, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you love the Resident Evil franchise, as this is exactly what this channel is all about. And with that out of the way guys, let's get into the review. To begin the story, we get a very Tim Burton Coraline-esque intro with Mia Winters reading the fairy tale known as The Village of Shadows to Rose Winters, the daughter of Ethan and Mia. This intro to the game is very underrated and is arguably the most unique intro in all of the Resident Evil games and should be considered one of the greats with RE2 Original and many others. I do enjoy this design in the beginning even though it does give off a very creepy vibe. After Ethan and Mia's dialogue, Ethan puts cute little Rose to bed. There are multiple interesting files you can read before you go back to Mia. For example, one of them is Mia's attitude towards Ethan getting into a fight and Ethan thinking the incident in Louisiana traumatized her, in which he also states he thinks about that incident very consistently, and the Dolby incident inside the Baker house as it's usually reported. This is a very nice touch to the game, and you can also find a file including the size of Rose being bigger than your average baby. Face reveal? Yeah, this is a little awkward. Yeah, you know what, let's go back to Mia. Mia later on gets shot by Chris Redfield's Hound Wolf Squad, leaving us on a huge WTF moment. Chris puts the final bullets into her, leaving Ethan beyond confused. I ended up ranting about this situation in a previous video of mine. I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can hear my thoughts on this. After Chris takes Rose, Ethan now wakes up to a crashed van in the freezing cold. How did this van crash? You guys probably already know. And you can see a couple squadron members either being unconscious or dead from the crash site. Ethan walks into a dark trail in the woods, in which this does give off a very horror-like tone. And if you play this game with headphones on, the music showcased is very loud and very eerie, especially if you have them all the way up to the max. You could honestly make a complaint that it was just more loud than scary, and I would totally be fine with that. After we deal with his hand bleeding a whole lot more, we encounter the setting on where this game takes place, with one of the coolest screenshots or atmospheres that you can post, in which is Castle Dimitresque, easily the best building that stands out from everything else. Hey, I tried it with the tongue roll right there, man. Hey, give me some credit. For this playthrough, I ended up playing on New Game Plus, but in my first ever playthrough, I completed this game on hardcore difficulty. So I'm not necessarily a bad player, I just wanted to experience the atmosphere and many other things during this entire playthrough. After we witness the old man getting absolutely slaughtered, our first encounter with a Lichen is a very grotesque one, biting Ethan's pinky and most of his ring finger off, which sets the tone for what these vicious creatures are in this game. The Lichens are easily the most challenging base enemy I have experienced in a very long time. The harder the difficulty, the stronger and faster they will be. You can consider these vampire werewolves or whatever you want them to be. They are great enemies nonetheless. They do lack some variety, but later on in the game you encounter bigger ones and other ones that can shoot flaming bow and arrows. When you kill the first Lichen, it's only just the beginning for what's coming in mere minutes. The Lichen Attack gives off huge similarities to the first Ganado encounter to Resident Evil 4, but this attack is on a timer you must outlast. Also, it's the same thing for Resident Evil 4, but you also have to kill a certain amount of enemies as well, so you had 2 options, but for this one, only 1. And it also introduces essentially the big cheese of this village, known as Urias. What stands out about him is not that he looks like if Hagrid from Harry Potter aged, took some steroids and got infected with mutamycete, it's his big hammer he is packing. Pause. He swings it like no tomorrow, and what I like about him is that you can feel his presence. Literally. Okay, this is becoming a sus review now. After encountering with an old hag, we get introduced to a woman named Elena along with her father, Leonardo, who is severely wounded, also carrying a machete. Minutes later, we run into Luisa and other villagers, while a drunk one is just a genuine asshole who deserves his death, as Elena's father turns into a Lichen, killing Luisa and everyone else except for Ethan and Elena herself. On the verge of escaping, Elena's father reappears as he screams Elena's name, and then she goes to him, but the place is burning down and they both fall to their death into the fire. It felt like Elena was going to have a key role in this game, but honestly if she was going to be involved heavily in this game, it would have felt like Resident Evil 4 as she would have taken the role of Ashley Graham. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't want to deal with another escort mission in a Resident Evil game, since I know a lot of people are not big fans of Ashley. We enter Castle Dimitresque and get introduced to one of the four lords, Carl Heisenberg. And after waking up, we see all of the four lords, Alcina Dimitresque, Salvatore Moreau, and Donna Beneviento, along with her doll Angie. Also Heisenberg, who I introduced first, but more importantly, the main villain of this game, Mother Miranda. Heisenberg does call the Lichens and we end up running for our lives, and this happens. Ethan escapes the Heisenberg traps and we meet the one and only the Duke. He is basically your merchant from RE4 but with a little bonus. He has the ability to cook meals for Ethan, improving his health, movement speed, defense, and blocking enemy attacks. And he also shows off his interesting character as well. We later on meet Lady D's three quote-unquote daughters, Bella, Daniela, and Cassandra. And later on, we can tour around the castle and appreciate its beauty. The castle section of this game is great. Entering the rooms with fantastic design and the uniqueness of the castle in general is just a great feeling and is one of the many highlights of this game. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree with me on this, but I wish this was able to last longer, but unfortunately, Lady D, the one person Capcom used to market this game to its largest extent and was responsible for a lot of sales, was the first of the four lords killed off of this game. Capcom didn't expect the outburst of the Lady D fandom, but I do believe if this was still in development and people were falling in love with Lady D, she definitely would have had a bigger role without question. In the latter half of the castle section, she became a stalker after she cut Ethan's hand off. However, to me, this felt like the weakest stalker I encountered in any RE game. Mr. X and even Nemesis in the remakes of 2 and 3 felt a lot stronger compared to Lady D. And let's not forget about Jack Baker as well. I literally could run circles around her with zero problem, and her as a character should have had more weight in the story and game. I would have loved to see a bigger role from her, but unfortunately was short-lived, but Lady D still has her impact in the story and in our hearts, along with her daughters, for you simps out there. The next section of the game is without a doubt the most horrifying one, known as House Beneviento, specifically centered around puzzles, a dark atmosphere, hallucinations, and many more. But more importantly, there was one thing that stood out. The baby monster is easily the most memorable thing in this game in terms of horror. My first encounter with this gave me chills and honestly wondering where I should go to avoid this terrifying creature. Figuring out your way around this section of the house, but what is creepy about the monster is that it makes baby noises or swallowed a baby monitor or whatever you call it, but nonetheless, still creepy but very funny at the same time, which could potentially eliminate the horror elements as well. I haven't died from him, but it's honestly very easy to maneuver around him. You escape the baby and now we enter a room full of Angie's friends who are a bunch of fucked up dolls and basically play a mission of hide and go seek tag or whatever the case may be so we can escape House Beneviento. This section of the game is a highlight as well. I honestly wish we went into this house first instead of the castle so we can experience the horror side of the game in the very beginning. I guess that's just me. The baby monster is very iconic, and what I love about this part of the game is that you don't have any weapons to kill it, as Angie takes them all away, and it really depends on puzzles and using your mind to maneuver around the place and escape the baby monster and finding Angie to try and kill her. And overall, I think the section is great for what it is, and I hope to have similar type of rooms or sections in a Resident Evil game in the near future. The next boss we move on to is Salvatore Moreau. To describe this section of the game in one word, I would have to go with underwhelming. When Moreau turns into that big ass fish that basically tries to eat you alive, I feel like I was playing Gmod Death Run for the first half of the entire sequence. Moreau, however, isn't necessarily a bad character, he just gets overshadowed by the likes of Lady D, Heisenberg, and Beneviento. He's definitely the one that gets treated like a nuisance of the four lords, and I honestly feel bad for him because he feels way more cursed than anyone else in this entire story if your name isn't Ethan Winters. His boss fight is, however, quite interesting, where you have to aim for a specific area to sustain heavy damage to him, or even any damage at all, and, well, that's most of the Four Lords boss fight, so what the fuck am I talking about? An interesting element he brings to the table is that he can spit out deadly acid, and if Ethan is stranded with no roof over his head, you can consider it an instant death. The only way to neutralize this, as I said earlier, is if you find shelter, which that part alone brings an interesting factor into the boss fight, which I really like. The death run part of the game was very underwhelming for me, and the boss fight, I mean, it was cool, but I mean, it wasn't necessarily the best one, but I mean, yeah, that's all I really have to say about this section. If the boss fight is long for you guys, just try and find shelter, and also unload on him if you have infinite weapons, just like I did. Once you defeat Moreau, my favorite part of the game is truly showcased, but I will save it for later on in this video. We reach the Lichen Den where the action turns up quite a few notches. This isn't really a bad section for me, but it does involve the biggest problem I have with this game. All in all, the Lichen Den fight is a good one if you can manage to use up a lot of health, as you will probably need it once we fight Urias one-on-one, kind of, which is the boss fight to get the final flask. If you do not end up killing him in a couple minutes, Lichens will spawn and distract you, but at the same time, you can use Urias to kill the Lichens without using any ammunition while he swings and attacks you with that big hammer he uses. After you defeat him, you can take the hammer and sell it to the Duke for a somewhat small fortune. Treasure in this game is very important, especially on how hefty the prices can be to upgrade your weapons towards the final parts of the game. So collect any possible treasure you can get because you damn sure need it, and you will need the upgrades for your weapons as well. Hunting is also a very important part to upgrade Ethan. If you meet the requirements needed for the Duke to cook your meal, Ethan will be upgraded as I mentioned earlier in the video, which is a really cool feature which I don't believe has ever been used before in a Resident Evil game. So feel free to correct me in the comment section down below if I'm wrong.
Ethan Winters, welcome.
After getting all the flasks with Rose, and then we move to Heisenberg's factory, where this section in your first playthrough can be a pain in the ass as you can easily get lost, but the more you play it, the easier the section is. You don't deal with much enemies, but you deal with drill monsters, or soldats as I like to call them in this game. They are very brutal, so it does make sense that you only deal with either little hordes of enemies or just one drill monster, and the more you progress with the factory, the more armor they get. The biggest of them is basically a Panzer from Call of Duty. It takes a few explosives to get rid of most of the armor, and then you are almost at free will to aim and shoot for the weak point. The factory isn't really much for me, but what really saves this section of the game is Heisenberg himself. He is my favorite villain in this game. His charisma is unmatched to me, and his voice is absolutely amazing. Especially him referencing the boulder puncher Chris got me to be a fanboy of Heisenberg. Do you guys remember in RE7 where you had to choose to either cure Mia or Zoe? I wish they used that feature for where Ethan could have made the decision to kill Miranda using Heisenberg's help. I would have loved to see an alternate ending if Ethan did say yes to work with him, while the canon ending would have been no. But it is what it is, and we have to live with that, sadly. His boss fight was basically like BattleBots, but I had my fun and I enjoyed it. I didn't think much of it. It definitely was out of the equation of what Resident Evil really is, but again, it was dumb fun and I enjoyed it. After Mother Miranda unleashes her fatality on Ethan, we enter a cutscene with Chris basically saying he messed up, and we finally get to be Chris in the main story of a Resident Evil game. And yes, I know about the Not a Hero DLC, I haven't played that DLC yet, but it still felt very nice to play as one of the OG 4RE characters since I did beat 7's story. This sequence is honestly the perfect interpretation of what Chris is now in terms of combat, an action hero with big muscles and powerful guns. This part of the game to some is the most disliked, but I really enjoyed it for what it was. When we get to Miranda's lab, we discover a note that reveals that this village is where everything began for Umbrella as a company. It turns out Oswald E. Spencer, the main founder of the Umbrella Corporation, was a student of their Mother Miranda when she wasn't an infected BOW. Chris then encounters the real Mia Winters as she was kidnapped and imprisoned after Mother Miranda had zero use for her. In case anyone is unaware of the situation, let me take you back to this part of the game. After Heisenberg reached his final form, Ethan encounters Chris where he ends up explaining to Ethan the full details of what was really going down. The woman that Chris shot in the beginning of the game wasn't Mia Winters, it was Miranda herself. She then revived herself and caused the van that Ethan was in to crash and then proceeded to kidnap Rose while Ethan was unconscious. When exactly did Miranda kidnap Mia? That we may never know. The file Ethan reads after the cutscene tells us when Miranda injected herself with the mutamycete, but had a special strain of it. That strain gave her the ability to mimic and shapeshift into anything she wanted, mimicking Mia in the beginning of the game of course. Now that I'm done explaining that, let's go back to where we are as of right now. Ethan is alive after his heart being ripped out and is dreaming about being stranded in the cold weather as he sees Evelyn for the first time since RE7. telling Ethan that he was already dead a long time ago and turned into a BOW when he died in the Baker house in RE7, hence Jack killing him. Ethan is infected with the mold virus, which is what is holding his body up still to this day, which does explain himself putting his hand back together. We are now about to reach the final boss fight with Mother Miranda, and I like this boss fight to be honest with you guys, but what stops me from loving it is that it really reminds me of the Sadler boss fight in Resident Evil 4. Of course, Miranda is different in terms of abilities, but in design you can say they're pretty damn similar, but I enjoyed it still. Ethan then finally retrieves Rose but does fall gracefully, which is also telling us that he is on the brink of death. Chris has a detonator that can destroy the entire village, but Ethan takes it away from him and goes off to sacrifice himself to save his daughter, his wife, and his friend Chris. I know this definitely reminds Chris of one death that he experienced in 2013, which was the death of his former partner Piers Nivens. These deaths are very similar, and sadly we don't get to see Ethan's face before death. Maybe he could come back? But who knows. Mia and Chris are on the aircraft mourning Ethan's death, and K9, I believe, who is a part of the Hound Wolf squad, tells Chris the BSAA, the organization that Chris helped co-found with Jill Valentine, became the very thing they swore to destroy. They are now using bioweapons to fight their wars, essentially. And Chris is beyond pissed, requesting a course to BSAA Europe HQ, which should be a teaser to the Village DLC, but we could only hope that happens. And that is the end of Resident Evil Village. Of course, there is the post-credit scene with Rose that I already did a whole video analyzing it, so I'll leave a link in the description down below so you guys can watch that video. Now it is time for me to point out my favorite and least favorite thing about this game. Started off with my least favorite, I am going to pick the inconsistent pacing. Expect me to say that a lot. You start off slow, action with the first Lichen Attack. Entering the castle slows the pace down. Boss fight turns up the pacing in action. Enter a horror house which drastically slows down the pacing. Moreau's Reservoir, which turns it back up. Lichen Den, high pacing with a lot of action. Heisenberg's Factory, slow pacing. Chris's section, action and pacing turned all the way up. For me, this was the biggest problem in the game. I really like this game, but pacing throws me off a lot, and it also stalls my motivation for me to complete any other runs for this game. But if you guys did like the pacing, then more power to you, as I respect your perspective on it. But moving on to the thing that I love the most about it, and that is the side quest treasure hunting. This is what honestly motivates me to keep on playing the game and have multiple playthroughs. I want to talk about two things with you guys about this. After you beat Moreau, you can go to Louise's house, and there is something waiting for you. This thing is absolutely terrifying once you see what it fully is. The actual name of this thing is something I will not try to pronounce, so I'm just going to call this the Ancient Beast. You need to throw everything at this thing. Unless you have infinite weapons, then he's easy to kill. The price for this is worth it. This may cause you to use a lot of ammo, but again, this is the most expensive treasure in the game, known as the Crystal Ancient Beast. You can sell it for 80,000 lei. But that's not the end of the side quest element of this game that I love, and I'm going to do some live commentary to guide the people who haven't done this yet. You go to the area where you find Louise's treasure, and this is where the crank becomes extremely useful after completing Moreau's section of the game. There are multiple areas you can explore, and all of these are 100% worth the time used, especially when you consider the awards. You see a boat that you can ride, and you have the option to go either up the stream or down the stream. Let's save the best for last, and let's go up the stream. There are two specific areas you can explore after using the crank once again. There is this little shack or house you can enter, and you see a wishing well or a well. You can use the wheel well, and what it gives you is not a treasure, but a ladder. You want to climb down this ladder, and you will embark on this interesting but very easy puzzle to get some treasure. You can get other items such as shotgun ammo and pipe bombs. You want to do exactly what I'm doing on the screen, and once you get over the bump, you will find a piece to the necklace with two holes, being the large pigeon ruby stone. If you have the two stones, you can combine the treasure and it will be known as the Dimitresque necklace. There is another area you can explore that is very close to the wishing well. You're going to have to complete another puzzle in this area, and it is very, very easy, and do exactly what I'm doing on the screen right now, even though it's probably not enough time. I should be making a tutorial video about this, but I want to share and express my favorite part of this game. You get the Golden Lady statue, and now let's head back to the boat. Now it is time to go downstream, and this is where the interesting stuff really begins. You can find the finest fish, the last meal, to help Ethan's movement speed to be upgraded to max. and we stumble across this dark cave, and I'm just gonna let the gameplay speak for itself. The sound of whatever creature or the mold made would absolutely terrified me on my first time experiencing this, and it made me want to get the hell out of the cave, but I realized it didn't do any harm. It's an interesting thing to look at, and it's one of the coolest locations in this entire game. Also, you get an antique coin from RE7, which you can sell to the Duke. Moving on to Mercenaries Mode, it's very unique getting abilities like headshot damage, movement speed, etc, but comparing it to the other Mercenaries modes in RE4, 5, 6, and even the original 3, RE8's Mercenaries is quite boring in my opinion. The only reason I had any motivation to play it was so I can get the Darth Maul lightsaber looking thing and I can just slice through Lichens and every other enemy in the game. Even the raid modes in the Revelation series I find way more entertaining, but for this, it doesn't feel fun, especially with what you have to accomplish to get the rewards like the lightsaber. It's honestly a pain in the ass, and I only upgrade one weapon, which is, I believe, the Colt handgun, and it's very good to be completely honest with you. I like the feature of using the Duke, but I also like getting a base set of weapons to work with like the old Mercenaries mode, and we can only use Ethan as well, so that's kind of a buzzkill. But maybe that's just me. There's also this specific area of the map around House Beneviento where there is this one enemy that never appears on screen. I don't know if it was a bug, I retried the area multiple times and the bug would still happen, and it's best to kill every enemy you need to kill to get a scoring bonus, so with that one enemy never spawning, I lost all motivation to play this game mode. Combos are very crucial in RE8's Mercenaries mode, so if you don't get the max combo, you might as well restart all over again. Now, moving on to the character side of things. Ethan felt way more like a character compared to RE7 in that game. He had zero character at all, and during my playthrough of RE7, he felt like a bot. The story of saving his daughter is very generic, but it did his character a lot of justice. But what's crazy is people were already getting tired of Ethan and his story, and honestly, I'm with them on that topic. He just feels very bland and dull, and I feel bad for him because Capcom was extremely lazy, especially not giving him a face, or maybe they tried to use that as the charm or characteristic about him, but I mean, it's kind of a weird characteristic to be completely honest with you. Chris is more involved in the main story, but he was low-key a huge problem in this game that I talked about in a previous video of mine. Him not telling Ethan what was really going down was a huge red flag because Ethan had a right to know what Chris was doing. I don't like how Capcom portrayed Chris as some sort of villain, and it just felt very weird. There is a teaser that he may be involved in the DLC going to BSAA HQ, but we will have to wait and see. Also, he sounded exactly like Carlos in RE3 Remake. Jeff Shine is a great voice actor, but I don't know why they didn't bring back the RE7 voice actor or the Vendetta voice actor because they both did pretty good from what I hear about the RE7 voice actor. Mia Winters was an absolute afterthought in this game. Her role in RE7 was almost 1,000 times bigger compared to this game. They really butchered her, and Ethan not even acknowledging where the real Mia was after Chris told him he shot the fake one is really concerning, and it was a Hound Wolf squad member who asked the question we were all asking at the end of the game. Mother Miranda is a great villain in my opinion, but I honestly felt like she could have been the next Wesker as to where she could have been the main villain in multiple Resident Evil titles, especially her influencing Oswald Spencer to create Umbrella, and even creating the Mutamycete mold. I could be wrong about that, correct me in the comment section if so. She was a missed opportunity, but also I feel like some of the Four Lords overshadowed her in terms of presence, specifically Lady D and Heisenberg. She is still great, but it does suck that she is now dead, to be completely honest with you guys. The Duke is just like the Merchant, nothing but pure mystery, and them even knowing each other is lovely, but even more suspicious at the same time. Do they just hire these merchants to sell weapons to RE protagonists? I mean, it's kind of funny if they do that. I loved the Duke in this game, and he doesn't even know what he is after having a chat with Ethan before the Mother Miranda boss fight, which, again, adds a whole lot more mystery to the Duke. This game, in my opinion, has honestly become very underrated. I don't see much people talking about this game, and I hope this does bring some sort of discussion back. This did get a Game of the Year nomination at the Game Awards in 2021, and I personally enjoyed this game and put a lot of hours into it. I enjoyed the story, gameplay, environment, atmosphere, enemies. It's very good. A DLC has been confirmed by Capcom almost 1 year ago today. They started development after the release of Ari Village, so we will wait and see if we get any info or trailers in the future. This video is being recorded before May 7th, and if there is info or a trailer, I will probably have made a video about it already. Nonetheless, I am excited for the DLC, and I really hope to see more than one. I want to know what you guys think. Do you love this game? Do you hate it? Are you mixed about it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I would 100% recommend you guys to play this game if you haven't. If you enjoyed this review, a like on this video would be very appreciated. I put a lot of hard work into this video, and honestly, if you guys want to share this to your friends or family that are fans of this game or even the Resident Evil franchise in general, it would be very appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to help me get to 1,000 subs before the end of 2022. I would love you guys eternally if you ended up doing so. I hope you guys have yourselves a good day, a good night, and a good sleep. Take care, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, and much love.